Hi, this is Travis with another video for you guys. So I'm a doctor of physical therapy and I've also been a personal trainer about 15 years. And so for those of you who've seen my other videos, I create all kinds of band exercises you guys can do at home, and I'm going to be adding more to that later. But today I'm just going to talk about some exercises you can do that doesn't involve any bands at all. All you're going to need is just your body weight, or I'll show you a cool way you can take a backpack and turn it into a makeshift weight vest. I know a lot of you have been doing push-up challenges and things like that lately. So this will be a nice complement to that, because I'm going to show you basically 4 other movements, so it'll be 5 total that you can just do in a circuit. You know, you can pick 20 reps, 25, 30, you know, wherever you're at, and just kind of take it from the top and go through a few cycles of a circuit. I'll be giving my 2 cents at the end, but for now, I'll go ahead and find some open space and we'll get started. Okay, so the first exercise I want to show you guys is just a basic squat. Nothing too fancy, but the form sometimes can be a problem for a lot of people. And so the simplest way, I think, to learn a squat, for those of you that aren't that good at it yet, is to just do, you know, a box squat or like a chair squat. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just take a chair and then essentially just sit down in that chair without holding on to anything. And so for some of you, for balance, you might want to put your arms out in front of you. And so you're just going to basically sit down in the chair, okay, and then stand back up. And that's a pretty simple way to try to learn a squat. Ideally, you want to have your feet about, you know, hip width or slightly wider. It's okay if you have a pretty wide stance. You don't have to have your toes totally straight ahead. If they're slightly out to the side, that's fine, because that's the path your knees are going to essentially take as you're going down to that squat. And so again, just a little brace in your core. Again, this is really going to tackle those thighs and glutes. And so you just kind of squat down and then back up. Okay? And so essentially you just want to do as many of those as you can until you start to get a little fatigued. Okay? If you want to make it a little harder, you can go just a little slower on the way down and then still sort of quick on the way up. Now, for those of you that can get to a point where that's pretty easy, just grab a backpack if you happen to have one of those laying around. Some of you might even have some light weights, perhaps. And so all you really have to do is just throw some weights. You know, you can get some water bottles or some big books, whatever you have laying around that's got a little bit of weight to it. Take your bag and just sort of wear it reversed so that it goes around the front of your chest, okay? And then you can just kind of clutch it in your hands or however you want to hold it. And then now you've got a little bit of resistance to add to the mixture. And so now you can go into that squat with a little bit of extra weight, okay? And again, you can hold it like that, or again, cross your arms, whatever you feel best. Okay, so the next exercise I want to talk about is going to be a row. So we're going to get after all the big lats and some of the upper back muscles, the ones we call the scapular retractors, some shoulders, some biceps. So a lot of big players are going to come in together on this one. A simple way to row would be if you had that weighted backpack or weighted bag laying around that we just built on the squat. And then I'm going to basically get a wide stance here and then take my hands and just sort of pull it into where my pocket area is, okay? So you're going to brace your core, lean forward, and then just pull this guy into yourself, okay? Some people, when they row, they kind of pull more up here and they shrug. So it's really more of a pull kind of low, almost like you're trying to get your hand to that groin pocket area, okay? And so then you would just take your bag and just row for whatever number you're trying to shoot for. You know, once you feel some tiredness in those muscles, definitely you can take a break. If you want to make this one a little harder, you can stagger your stance. So put your leg back on the hand you're rowing towards, and then if you want to brace this hand inside of your thigh, and then pull that guy into you for whatever number you're shooting for. Okay, once you hit that number, then obviously you go ahead and switch your feet and then start on the other side. But that's the row, which is a great back exercise. Again, if you have a pull-up bar, that certainly is a great exercise as well. But this is a pretty simple way to do this just in your living room. Okay, so another great exercise that gives you a lot of bang for your buck is a lunge. Now, for many of you that don't mind wearing shoes in the house, I would recommend probably wearing them, because as you'll see, you're going to come down here, and that puts quite a bit of strain on that big toe area. Especially when you start adding some weight into the mixture, you may start to overload that joint. So when you have a shoe, it's just going to take a little bit of pressure off that foot. So there's a couple ways you can do this. You can put your feet and just glue them in place with a staggered stance here. I tend to call this a split squat, okay? And if you want to throw your hands on your hips just for stability there, that's totally fine. And basically almost like you're just falling straight down for an elevator ride. So, straight down. If you can just kind of kiss the knee, that's fine. If you want to stop a little shy of that though, that's okay too. I tend to drop my knee down to where it's just hovering, or maybe a soft touch. But you definitely don't want to be slamming your knee down, you know, on the floor. So if you don't have the muscle control to kind of slowly lower yourself like that yet, you can always grab something like a foam roller just to steady yourself up on this one and then come down that way, okay? And that might be a nice way to sort of ease into this. Now, a lot of people tend to come forward when they're doing this one, and so their body tends to do this. So I tend to sit back a little bit more, so you're going to be able to just keep your weight a little more evenly distributed over the middle of the heel part of that front foot. And ideally try and do more work with the front leg if you can. Let the back leg just sort of relax a little more and go along for the ride. And so that's the split squat. If I wanted to make that a little more of a lunge, I just step forward as I do that. So then I would just step forward, kind of push myself back to my starting point. And again, I can alternate here, okay? Or if I want to keep a little more continuous tension on one leg, I could just do all my reps on one leg, finish that set, and then switch to the other side. I would say if you're going more for an endurance, type of, you want to get more of that aerobic effect, alternating is probably going to get your heart and lungs going a little bit more. If you're looking more for kind of muscle development, you might get a little bit more out of staying with one leg, finishing up the set, and then doing the other side. And then as usual, just like on the squats, don't forget you can add some load to the mixture. So again, you can put this one on the back or the front. I tend to like the way it feels a little more on the front. So again, I would just come in here, say for instance, if I'm doing my split squat, and then up and down I would go, okay? So same kind of thing. Now, some of you might ask about the traveling lunge. That's a lunge where you're actually stepping forward, and then you sort of move forward again. But for many of you that might be in a living room or a smaller space, that might be a little hard to do. I like the split squats just because it's a little bit less impact, because once you're staying in place, then you're not really getting that bouncing or that pounding, So if you are gonna do the lunge, just make sure you set your foot down, kind of nice and softly. It shouldn't really be a loud thud. So if you're gonna do the lunge, just try to set that foot down kind of gingerly, almost like you're sneaking up on somebody. Try to not really have a loud thud if you can. One, because that'll make the muscles work a little harder, and then two, because it's going to minimize the impact on the joints. Okay, so the next exercise is an exercise most of you are probably familiar with. It's going to be the push-up, which works your chest muscles, it gets your shoulders as well as your triceps. You're also going to be getting some of your core muscles. And so the main thing about doing it is just where your shoulders are going to be. Some people tend to go really flare on the push-ups. I tend to come down more at that 45, so not butted up against my body, but kind of in a 45-degree position. And so from there, I'll just get down on the mats or the floor, wherever you are, okay? Don't forget, you can always use some dumbbells or something for those of you who have wrist issues. Then from there, just kind of brace your midsection and come down into your push-ups, okay? And then you would just do whatever number you're shooting for, just kind of go until you run out of gas. Now, for those of you that get a little stronger, eventually you may start to notice that it gets easy for you with body weight, and that's when you can, again, add something like your weight bag into the mixture. Now, in this case, obviously, it would need to go onto the back. So just put this thing on the way you normally would, okay? If you have any of these extra buckles, sometimes this can help to secure it in place. From there, you just go back in your push-up position, and then again, off you would go into your push-ups. I tend to like to go for just a light touch on the chest, but if you have any shoulder problems or any pinching, you don't necessarily have to go that low. But that's just a nice exercise for the upper body. And when it comes to building up the chest and shoulders, that's one of the simplest ways to do it when you don't have access to a lot of equipment. Okay, so for the last exercise, I want to give you guys an exercise that works a lot of muscle at the same time. So this is going to be a nice way to just kind of work on a little more emphasis on those, kind of core stabilizing muscles, get a little more into the shoulders, and also work on a little bit of mobility. So this exercise definitely checks a lot of boxes off the list. And I'm going to show you guys how to make it a little bit easier or harder depending on where you are. So this is going to be the inchworm. And so again, what you're going to do for this one, typically I'll take a pretty narrow stance, and you want to keep your legs about as straight as you can as you go down and touch the mat. Now, if you can't get down that far, you certainly can bend your knees a little bit and then palm the mat. And then what you're going to do once you have your hands down there is just walk those hands out as far as you can. So bring those hands out in front of you, one hand at a time. You're going to try to just walk your hands out, whatever distance you can. Once I get to that point, then I just walk my hands back to my feet, trying to keep my legs straight for as long as I can, okay? And if I can keep them pretty straight until I get back, then great. Coming back up to standing with your legs straight does put a little more stress on your back sometimes. So obviously you want to be mindful of any considerations you might have as far as orthopedic limitations and things like that. But let's try a few of those just so you can get a feel for it. So again, legs straight, walk those hands out as far as I can. In this case, I'm just going to stop here for now, okay? Hands back to my feet with my legs straight for as long as I can. And then if you wanted to, you could come up like that or just come straight up depending on how your back feels, okay? So that would be one. And then you come back down again. You know, again, walk them out for as far as you can. Walk them back to your feet. Stand up, and then that would be two. The farther you can get your hands out in front of you, the more you're going to tend to notice your core muscles are having to work. Now, for those of you who aren't necessarily, that strong yet or maybe ready for all that, you can kind of back that up and do a kneeling version. So for some of you that maybe aren't, that strong or that flexible yet, you don't get as much of the hamstring stretch, but this can be an easier starting place. And so from here, you would just walk your hands out, as far as you can, and then walk your hands back, and then come up, and that would be one. And so you still get a lot of the benefits as far as the shoulder and the core, just not quite as extreme as when you're standing up. And so as you'll notice, if you were to do this and walk your hands, significantly out in front of you, these muscles definitely have to work pretty hard to hold you out there. I wouldn't necessarily think you need to load that one up heavily, but maybe just try and do extra reps, okay? And then you can try to go a little faster if you want to progress. Okay, so those are the 5 exercises. And so I know a lot of you are doing push-up challenges and things like that right now, which is pretty cool, but if you're only doing push-ups, that sort of makes you a little more one-dimensional. So let's just say you were trying to do 20, so I would just go through that whole workout. So I would just go, I would do my squats, and I would try to do 20, for instance, okay? Once you hit your 20, then you would immediately go into the rows. So, grab your bag, and then again, I would do the rows, either double or single. You could do your 20 that way. Grab a little bit lower. So you could do your 20 that way, and then you would have to do 20 on the other side, okay? So 20 reps there. Put that down, and if you wanted to, or if you want to add it to the next exercise, then you go into your lunge, hands on your hips if you want to, and 20 of those guys, switch, and then 20 of those guys, okay? After that, you go into your push-ups. Now here's your push-up challenge, and then you would do 20 of your push-ups, okay? And once you finish that, and this would be really tough, I would say maybe start with 5 or 10 of the inchworms. If you were to start with 5 or 10 of those, maybe 20 of the others, maybe take a rest at the end of all those and see if you can do a couple of cycles. That could be a pretty complete workout, and it really wouldn't take you very long to do it. So even if you rested 2 minutes between each cycle, if each exercise only took you about a minute, that whole workout would pretty much be 15 to 20 minutes tops. You will have worked most of your major muscle groups, and so you're giving yourself a pretty complete, no frills workout. So kind of, going along with that 80-20 rule, you're gonna get some benefit by doing other exercises, but these ones definitely cover a lot of your bases. So for those of you though that do want a little bit extra, maybe you're looking for a little more muscle development, or you're looking just to kind of get something else out of your workouts, definitely check out my other videos on at-home workouts with bands. So for those of you that want to hit shoulders, want to hit chest, want to hit back a little bit more, check some of that stuff out. Definitely comment below, let me know what you guys think. Please subscribe if you like this stuff, and as usual, I hope you guys have some fun.